going. Vault Typhoon is a significant threat into the U.S. electric grid. If you'll recall, Vault Typhoon was the Chinese threat actor group that was building backdoors within the utilities along the east and west coast of the United States, from Guam, Hawaii, and all the way through Seattle, Oregon, California, Nevada, and other states as well. Well, now Dragos is publishing a case study describing how the intrusion attributed to Vault Typhoon actually took place. The target they did the case study on was the Littleton Electric Light and Water Department, a small public utility in Massachusetts. It serves Littleton and Boxborough. The utility was in the process of implementing Dragos's OT when the intrusion was detected, which led to an expedited deployment. The case study by Dragos focused on the benefits of its solution, but let's take a look. This isn't a sales show, and I love Robert Lee, and I think Dragos does an unbelievable job, but, let's focus on what Vault Typhoon actually did. So Microsoft first reported on the group. They were the first to actually recognize what was happening within the Vault Typhoon environment and their target on critical infrastructure in espionage operation. They've made headlines due to some botnets and use of 0 days. Dragos reported that Vault Typhoon, which the company tracks as Vaultzite, we're going to call him Vault Typhoon, Robert, I'm sorry, has been collecting sensitive OT data from hacked organization. In case of the LELWD power utility, they were seen collecting data on OT systems. The significance of the discovery of the attack is highlighting that the adversary not only aimed to maintain persistent access to the victim's environment for a long tenure, which they were in there for nearly 300 days, but we're also aiming to exfiltrate specific data related to OT operating procedure and spatial layout data relating to energy grid operations. This information could be pivotal in helping the adversary know exactly where to attack and when. So I'll give you a prime example of what this means, since I'm in energy for the time being. I'll tell you something very, very interesting here of why they wanted. So when you talk to people in OT, they say, what does OT data matter? In fact, NERC-CIP, the regulatory body, says OT data does not matter. You don't need to really secure it. You need to secure your security plans. But why does OT data matter for the Chinese? Because the grid system in the US is based off of grids, right? And so there's regions with grids, and then those regions have kind of like a regional operator. And that regional operator will say, we need 1,000 megawatts of power today to power through demand. And different power plants will each contribute their share of megawattage to it. So if you're trying to schedule an outage and you go after four power plants and you take them down, right? You could be looking at a temporary outage for specific locations, but then the recovery, the idea of this regionality from NERC-CIP, which is smart from FERC, NERC, Department of Energy, is other power plants would contribute. But if you know the OT operating procedures and you know the data layout relating to grid operations, then you don't need to interrupt the power plant. You could just interrupt the transmission part that goes through. And the transmission part is much harder to secure because it's live 24/7. It rarely can be maintained and dealt with in a significant way unless you're building a workaround to that transmission station. So that's why. So now that I've explained that, when you look at the stage 2 in the ICS cyber kill chain, meaning that they can develop and test specific meaningful attacks on ICS, Vault Typhoon is one of the only active threat groups that have been tracked by Dragos that have such capabilities. So again, you're kind of seeing what the Chinese have in terms of capabilities targeting the electric grid in the US. The idea is disruptions, blackouts. So if they decided to take over Taiwan, what they would do is they would do rolling blackouts that would limit U.S. response, meaning the Navy maybe couldn't get some ships out. You couldn't deploy troops. The troops that needed to be called into base for deployment would have a harder time getting there. You would be delaying the response of the U.S. to potentially defend Taiwan. And so with that being said, they want to do rolling blackouts, and it also hurts the country economically, right? When there's no electricity, there's no commerce. And when there's no commerce, people are at the verge of anarchy. So it creates chaos, meaning police departments, National Guards would have to be deployed, and it would really hinder the ability of the U.S. to be able to respond effectively to what's going on, and it would give China an edge. There's That's you have to understand all of that. Cyber happens in the context. You have to understand that context. That's the context of why they do this. It's a series of events that would limit people. And imagine we're a society today that's driven by news. We're driven by these things. So when we don't have it, people will go crazy. Just look at COVID. All right, there's that. Continuing on China, they're still continuing to target routers. This time, looking at Juniper network devices. Researchers are saying that, according to incident responders from Mandiant, UNC 38886, a Chinese state-backed group, is behind a campaign last year trying to deploy custom backdoors on companies' Junos OS routers. The group appears to be mainly focused on defense technology and telecom organizations located in the US and Asia. So there's that. The Google-owned cybersecurity firm said it worked with Juniper to investigate the activity and found that affected routers were running end-of-life hardware and software. The malware deployed on them demonstrated that they had in-depth knowledge of advanced systems internals. Now, where are these routers made? China, right? So if you understand the routers are made in China, you understand that they understand how the board goes and their engineers are studying it. And I don't care what people tell me. That's why I insist that we should be producing these types of critical functions in the US, where all functional parts of it should be made in the United States or an allied nation that is owned by an ally of the United States. Otherwise, we have these types of attacks that will come through. By the way, this is a known type of threat vector there as well. So UNC continues to show deep understanding of the underlying technology of appliances being targeted, according to the company, and they're building out custom backdoors to give them persistence to take advantage of zero-day exploits. They're prioritizing stealth and operation, very similar to what they were trying to do in SolarWinds. Yes, I know SolarWinds was Russia, but no, it wasn't just Russia. There was a Chinese element to it. The fact is that the Biden White House quieted that, and that will be coming out, I've been told, by significant folks with information on the SolarWinds attack. The Chinese attribution is forthcoming. So